Call our meeting to order. This is December 3rd, 2018, Addison Central School District Board of Directors meeting here at the home of the Raiders. All right, a quick round of introductions, if you wouldn't mind. Perry, would you start us off?
Perry Hansen.
Tori Jacobite. Mary Colony.
Mary Gill.
Davina Damari. Suzanne Buck.
Peter Burrows, Superintendent.
Peter Conlon.
Lorraine Morse.
Chip Malcolm.
Victoria Jetty.
Vicki Wells, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services.
Thanks, everyone. Any members of the public here to provide public comment before we get started?
Can we get the principals to introduce themselves?
Oh, yes. You want to do it now?
Oh.
Yeah. So actually, I'm going to interrupt you for just 1 second. Well, I'm going to go back to introductions, and would all of our administrators who are here this evening introduce yourselves as well?
Jeff Buckett, Principal at Newport Central School.
Chris Frankfort, Principal of Holmes.
Tracy Harrington, Principal at Ripton. Jen Kravitz, Principal at Cornwall.
Bill Lawson, High School Principal.
Caitlin Steele, Director of Teaching and Learning. Brenda Canales, Principal at Salisbury.
Mike Lennox, Principal at Shore.
Steve Lindeman, Interim Principal of Mary Hill.
Christina Johnston, Principal at Wayford.
Thanks, everyone. Yes, hi. Good evening. Welcome.
Jen Quinn from Middlebury. I just wanted to make a comment. I've got 3 kids at Mary Hogan, and just wanted to kind of share, hopefully a lot of you are aware, but this year and I'm not sure exactly the words, but the controlled environment classroom, one of those was integrated into the school this year, and I'm not here to say whether that was the right choice or the wrong choice, but I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that it's been a really, really tough time this fall at Mary Hogan because of that, and whether it's all of that, I'm sure it's not, but so hopefully as the budget process moves along, hopefully the board is aware of that and thinks about that as we discuss personnel for Mary Hogan.
Thank you very much. Anything further? Great. If not, minutes from our 11/19/2018 meeting. Could I have a motion to approve those?
Moved.
Lorraine moves. Second. Any changes, comments?
Could I just ask for one follow-up?
Please.
In one section under C, ACSD will be transitioning to a new software platform for finance. And then where are we in relation to budget and year? I wasn't quite sure. I think I understand what it means. It just was sort of stood out alone there. So I didn't know how we would.
I would recommend, I'm not quite sure if putting a question in the minutes, I'm not quite sure the purpose of that. It would either need attribution or to be stricken, as far as I would read it.
I understood it in the context. I just didn't know whether it should be phrased better if
Yeah.
someone was reading it that
Or-
wasn't there.
Yeah, or awaiting more information on relation to the budget and year. Anything else? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? We have 1 abstention. Hi, Jen. All right, moving right along. Time for the bills.
There's only one set of bills. We did not read bills last week because they weren't put together with the way it was the week. So Victoria and I read them today. There's a total of $269,660.49 in the general funds and payroll expenses of $1,623,243.95 for a total of $1,892,904.44. And I move that we pay the bills.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, all those in favor of paying the bills as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We've paid the bills. Yes.
Next week, Jen can read the bills and I can't. This is just the time it's easy to do it. If there's someone else that can read the bills with
Victoria.
with Jen. Sorry, Jen. Yeah. I just saw you come in. You got Victoria, Mary, can you do that? Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all. All right. Well, one of the benefits of us traveling about, in addition to getting to see some weather we don't normally get to see, is our school presentations. And I don't know if it needs any introduction from you, but I think we're turning it over to our host principal, Mike Lennox.
All right, well, welcome to Shore Elementary School. I have a few videos of students today, and then a couple slides on how IB is changing the way the school is working and operating. So, these are a few things that we're working on this year that are important. So, creating a sense of belonging is always an important thing for us here. We've been increasing the level of student voice. A big part of that has been a student council that is starting, which is all of our 5th and 6th graders. We're one of the schools that's piloting a community partnership team, and that has brought about a lot of wonderful events, and I think it's the start of a really long and productive journey. And the primary years program is starting to come alive. We've been talking a lot about doing IB, and this is the year where the teachers are starting to really teach elements of IB. And I'll get to that in just a second. But another important thing with being a student here is school is fun. This video last year was one of my favorites. All right, so we have one of the better slides in ASCII now. So something that's new in the school this year have been our IB units of inquiry, and this is a picture of the board outside of our 3rd and 4th grade classroom, and it looks different as you go to the different classrooms, but every teacher has items like this posted in their classroom and outside their classroom, and understand how the poster work really explains how the 6-week or 8-week long unit takes place. And as we were thinking about doing IB, I remember going and touring, seeing these in schools, and now that I'm actually seeing them work, it's a lens for any adult who comes into the room or school to understand what the kids are exploring and how it works. So there's all these different components. We're going to walk through each one. Then I have a video of kids talking about what they're doing in school, and if we have time, it would be interesting just to walk down the hallways. We don't have too many classrooms to visit, and you can see how it looks differently in each one. So each unit of inquiry has a theme. The theme for 3rd and 4th grade in the fall is who we are. Students are going to have a who we are unit every year, so this is something they're going to loop back around and keep exploring. And every unit has a central idea that lives underneath that. So their central idea is our perspectives affect our actions within our communities. And that's pretty broad, and it can apply to different curriculum. It can also apply to a whole bunch of different things the kids encounter in their life. So I was encouraging parents to think about questions that connect to this. So our perspectives affect our actions within communities. That could be something where they see something in the news, they go to a sporting game, you know, how are the fans viewing this based on their perspective? They're watching a TV show. Why is that character behaving that way in that TV show? Just a way to make it come alive loud. And then you drill down and you get a little bit more specific and you get lines of inquiry. And if you were to ask a short student, what lines of inquiry are you studying? They're not going to be able to answer you. You know, they're not paying attention to that. This is for the adults. But the lines of inquiries that they're looking at is our perspectives as individuals and as a community, applying civic virtue and civic engagement, and identifying civic virtues and how they guide communities. So you can see right away that we went from the broad to something much more specific, and you can see how this is applying directly to social studies standards. And you can see it directly impacting curriculum, but at the same time, you can walk it back to the central idea we had, which was very broad. It could be alive with literature, it could be alive at home, it could be a whole bunch of different levels. So, and then the last thing on the board are the key concepts. And these are just questions that the teachers are asking the students as they're looking and encountering things. So during this unit of inquiry, this Longchamp is going to deliberately be asking questions that relate to perspective, function, and responsibility. And here's a good question that she could use. What is our responsibility? So as something comes up in the classroom structure, she could say, what is our responsibility here? And she keeps coming back to that. Or function, how does it work? I was walking through the library and they're doing a programming unit and they have these Bebop robot things that they program. And one of the questions is, how does Bebop work? You know, and as they get practice of asking the same questions over and over again in different settings, we're training them to think this way so that when they see something new, they also go, how does it work? Or what are the different points of view? And they start thinking deeper that way. And right on from kindergarten, the students are getting the same key concepts over and over again, so they get a lot of practice in asking these questions. So I have a video of a couple different students from Shoreham who I filmed today. And some of them are going to be talking about how forces in nature affect us and affect the environment. And you're going to hear them approach it from different perspectives. That's one of their lines of inquiry in their current unit of study. There's also just some other videos of me asking the students different questions.
And what's something that makes you Shoreham Elementary School students special?
How they share and how like we all work together on problems, and you could see like math work that we've done. So yeah.
Is school fun?
Yes.
What do you like about school?
Recess.
And what else do you like about school?
Eating lunch.
Okay, good.
Eating lunch.
Excellent. And what does it mean to belong at Shoreham Elementary School?
We gotta stay together.
Good. All right. So what's special about being at Shoreham Elementary School?
Learning, having fun, playing with your friends.
Hey guys, what are you doing?
When I played with Chase down, and the teacher helping me bring the other stuff down because Phoenix is not here.
Okay, thank you. Way to help out. So what have you been studying in 5th and 6th grade?
How forces affect the natural world.
All right. What are some of the forces?
Gravity, friction, magnetism, and electromagnetism.
And how do they affect the natural world?
They're all in our world. Our world has them, no matter what.
And can you think of one force and that stands out to you and how it affects the world?
Magnetism, because I don't know, it's in our Earth's core, there's iron swishing around, and somehow that creates a magnetic field. But how did the iron get there?
Can you tell me what's special about being a Shoreham Elementary School student?
We're all belonging here. Everybody gets treated how everybody else wants to be treated, and everyone's just welcome.
So in 5th and 6th grade, you've been exploring how forces affect the natural world. Can you talk about what that means to you?
It means to me that our actions, like burning coal to make the turbines spin, is having an effect on the nature. And what nature does to us, like gravity, it's holding us down to the earth and it's keeping us there, and it's a good way that the natural world affects us. And there are many different types of ways that we affect the natural world and that the natural world affects us.
Who's the teacher who you respect a lot here?
I really respect our music teacher, Miss Kusum, because she's very kind and nice. And when I don't understand something or I give up, she doesn't let me give up. She says, like, you can do this, you got this, just try it again. And she's very understanding, and if I have like a bad day, she asks me if I need a hug or if I'm okay. And she's really kind and nice to all of her students.
Can you tell me what you like best about Shoreham Elementary School?
I like being able to go sledding at recess and that the teachers are nice.
So 5th and 6th grade's been having an inquiry into how forces affect the natural world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Friction is very important because it makes it so no one thing can go on forever. Gravity is also a force, and gravity will keep you pulled down because it pulls on you just as much as everything else.
So can you tell me how you learned or explored this?
We went to Starbase and we learned what happened when you shot a rocket upwards and how force times the mass will equal your acceleration. And we learned about how the rocket has to go harder because if there's no air friction, it would just go straight up. But since there's air friction, you have to put more mass and acceleration towards it.
Ted, what's something that makes being...
All right, thanks. So a couple things that jumped out to me from the students' answers is the line of inquiry that they were exploring. They'd kind of taken their own different take. It wasn't like everyone said gravity works like this. So they were exploring that question. They were definitely covering content, but they were making their own meaning, and you could see their own personality kind of building into that, or their own take on the world. So that's a bit of the IB constructivist there. So you have the curriculum, you have the content, but you also have this thinking that's taking place. And I think as we get better at that, and students get more practice at that, that's going to really deepen their thinking and level of engagement. The other thing is maybe they knew what I wanted to hear, but I didn't prep them, and it was nice to hear them constantly get into the teachers are caring, this is a school where we belong. So whether or not they feel that every day, we know that they're receiving the messaging, and they know that that's part of our identity. So I think that's important too. And if you have a second while you're here today, just taking a walk through the classrooms and seeing the different IB posters and how they look different at each grade level could be, informative.
Will those be available to walk through when we're done?
They're ready right now. Yeah, it would be later.
Okay, maybe wait till when we wrap up.
Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you very much, Mike.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. All right, moving along on the agenda, we all received a copy of the board report from the superintendent. Any questions or discussion on any of that? I'll move on to a less easy to understand document that we received.
Understand?
Would you
It's
care to translate?
It's meant to obfuscate, so. You shouldn't understand it. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about kind of where the budget environment is right now. So I shared with all of you, I've got 2 hard copies here that you all can pass around. So this is information that goes out to business managers, and you don't need to understand all this, but it just kind of gives you a context as we start to get information from the state and start to then plug that information into where we are and start to reflect on kind of where we're going to land. So the first part of this, one reason I wanted to show you this was all the different ways that the tech center cost in our budget is calculated. So you can see here there are 3 or 4 different ways that the tech center, the money kind of flows through ACSD to the tech center. And then we pay a portion of the students that attend the tech center. We have been talking with Dana Peterson, the interim superintendent there, and he will be with Gibson, who is the business manager at the tech center. They're working on trying to get us the cost for us to put into our budget. They are, I think they are down, I think we're down maybe 6 or 7 students between last year and this year in terms of numbers. So we will have that information hopefully by the 17th for our next meeting. And this is something that we have to, each year the state sets these rates, sends them to us, the business managers crunch these numbers and figure out there's a base amount that goes to the tech center, and then there's an additional amount that's charged to the 3 districts that send students to the tech center. And that's based on the number of pupils you have going to the tech center over the course of the year. In addition on this sheet, you can see that the pre-K tuition each year is, per the state board rule, goes up. I believe it's 3%, 4%, something like that. So this year it's $3,356 per student. Our excess spending threshold, which we've talked about over the last couple months, and something that we are looking at and are looking at every year. As you know, if we go over that excess spending threshold, we are double taxed. And so for this coming year, it's $18,311. We're currently at $16,900 roughly. The tax rate, some of you, I'm not sure if VSBA sent out the tax rate information. Did you all receive that from the VSBA? No. Okay. So December 1 is the statutory deadline for the tax commissioner to set the yield rate. The yield rate is what we base all of our taxation on for school budgeting. That was completed on the 1st. The yield has gone up in FY19. It was at 10,220. In FY20, it is right now it's at 10,666. So the higher the yield rate, the better for us. So far that's good. As we go through the legislative session, generally that yield rate is modulated. I'm looking at you because I'm expecting you to keep it up as high as you can. And for example, the first year the yield rate came out, which I think was in FY18, it started at like 9,800 and it ended up I think around 9,400. So depending on what is happening through the development of the budget, the state budget, that yield rate shifts depending on how much money needs to be raised. So it's not a static number, but for us, in terms of budgeting between now and kind of mid to late January, when we adopt a budget here, that number will probably stay. There probably won't be any changes to it. So I think that's good news. In that tax rate letter, and I can send that along to all of you after the meeting tonight, kind of the message behind it was boards did a good job last year of constraining spending. The increase across the entire state was 1.7%, which is unusual. And a lot of that had to do with Scott coming out and really kind of threatening level funding, saying if you don't level fund, there's going to be, you're going to have to pay later. If you don't pay now, you're going to pay later, was the message that was sent. So a lot of boards, including us, made sure that we didn't put ourselves in a precarious position, as happened the previous year when he did the healthcare clawback. We, along with many others, level funded. And what the tax rate letter said was if school districts continued that 1.7% increase average, and of course we level funded, other people went up 3 or 4% too, so it wasn't that everyone level funded. that some of that additional money could be put into early childhood and to higher ed, which Scott has been really campaigning on and discussing over the past 2 years, that his goal is to take money from K-12 and to fund more early childhood and higher ed. So that was inserted into the tax rate letter as well.
As a suggestion, it wasn't a...
It's not going to happen. It was a general nudge, I think, in the letter. We learned late last week some disconcerting news that due to the AOE's shift to a new longitudinal data system, the equalized pupil number, which we have been waiting on to present our first draft, may be delayed. That's all I have to say.
No, like, delayed a couple of days, a couple of weeks?
We don't know. What has happened is they're trying to collect the enrollment numbers from all the districts in the state, and because of the mix-up with the data system, there are still, I believe there are 15 districts that don't have any information inputted. So they need to figure out how much they need to raise in total and then piece out the equalized pupils. So they're not going to do that until they've got all of them. So we called Brad James. Brad James is the one who created this document as well. We called Brad James at the AOE, and he didn't give us anything definitive, so he didn't say 1 day, 2 days. We asked that. So we kind of have to be somewhat fluid here. And so I've been talking with Brittany. Brittany is back, at least electronically right now. So I've been working with her, talking with her, and we may need to have a finance committee meeting in between meetings just to kind of chat about what we want to do for the 17th. If we don't have that number, how do we want to proceed and create kind of a new plan based on the information that we have.
I don't understand the 15 schools where the data is lost.
It's not lost, but it's hung up in a third-party provider.
So you have old software, new software, and
for whatever reason, these two systems aren't connecting, and there's a third party involved too. Because I know for us, we had done everything we could, and we were waiting on a third party. And we got a call from the AOE saying, hey, where's your information? And we said, we've done everything we can. The third party has that information. And then a couple hours later, it came back through. So they made some phone call to that third party. So there's some kind of, it's a design issue to me and a execution issue as well.
I don't understand the data that exists. Go in and grab it and type it into the new system.
Or can you call 15 school districts and get the information you need?
I would think so.
That's what I'm
It doesn't sound like.
I'm not sure in terms of the form in the longitudinal data system. I'm not sure how it enters into that and whether it could be manually inputted or what.
Something else is screwed up, and that's the excuse.
Yeah.
Probably.
Chip?
But of course, if it's by statute, they're supposed to have this by the 15th. So if they don't have it by the 15th, which means they don't have it for every school in the state, then every school in the state is in the same boat as we are.
Yep, that's right.
So there has to be, you'd think if it's 1 day, maybe we can accommodate that, but if it's 3 weeks or something as terrible as that, then hopefully our representatives would be doing something to say, wait a minute, you got to help us in this situation, because this is just not correct. Because it all comes back locally to us, honestly. No matter who's at fault, there still is that possibility that if the budget's not correct or ready or accurate or anything else, by the time we have to warn it, which is an absolute, and the date we vote on it is an absolute, it comes back to us as being somewhat at fault, no matter how much we may profess it isn't our fault. So it's a little scary, honestly, if we're in that position. Maybe it won't be, but I don't know.
We can't move town meeting day to April, can we?
Well, not this year. But we can, it does all seem to go back to the issue of, why do we have to vote on our school budgets on town meeting day when it just creates a false urgency? Something worthy of a conversation, probably.
Especially if this develops into something that is
becomes
truly
regular.
a major issue, other than just a possibility.
Yeah. All right.
Too many cooks in the...
That's your explanation of a piece of paper?
Yeah.
All right. Would you like to talk to us about what comes next? We have our ACSD schools budget and staffing overview.
Yeah, so tonight all of our principals are here, and they're here to kind of share briefly about their school, looking ahead to next year, in the context of the budget, obviously, and also sharing a little bit about what's happening in their school related to both the budget and instructionally as well. So we can start by seating. We can start by elementary and up. We can start high school down.
I'm going first.
Okay.
That solves the problem, but I don't need to be first either.
Go for it.
Okay. Can I do it seated, or can you hear me all right? You want me to stand?
I'll ask the people who have their backs to you if that's...
I don't want him to see
that's fine. I can hear
front blocking the
Yeah.
TV. Can you see him? Come in. Should I scoot?
Maybe he should stand up.
No, I think it would be better if you came up front, if you wouldn't mind.
Where's that button?
You're welcome to sit up front if you prefer, but...
It's comfortable for you.
That'd be great. Make too big a production of this. Age is its privilege. So I'm looking forward to next year, and I thought I'd start this evening with a sort of comparison of where we are now and where I expected the school to be next year. Currently, we have 527 students, 9 through 12, and when I gain the current 8th grade next year and lose the current 12th grade, the incoming 9th grade for next year is 156 students, and the rest of the classes are around 136, 127, 138. So we'll actually gain some 31 or so students next year. So I'm expecting to open next year around 565 students, which is just a slight uptick from where we are currently. And that figure includes a couple of assumptions, such as school choice continuing, and we probably will lose 4 seniors in the current grade, and school choice would probably get 4 more into grade 9. And then also we get annually, every year, we get 3 to 4 students from the North Branch school that come and join us in either 9th or 10th grade. So we'll have a little slightly increased enrollment next year. So that'll be somewhat of a challenge. We'll also have the challenge as we go further into implementing both IB and our graduation policy, which you folks adopted a year or 2 ago. We will be doing for the entire 11th grade a new course called the Theory of Knowledge course, which is a really interesting course which gets students to examine how they believe they know things from different content areas to all sorts of things. Do we know things through religion? Do we know things through the arts? How do we know things through politics? How do we understand the world around us? We will be administering that course to all 11th graders next year, so I'll need about 6 sections to do that, so that will both take up any capacity I have in the schedule right now, as well as drive class sizes up a few students, which I think we can stand. Another thing that we need to do is basically when I look at the next year of the school, so the 9th and 10th grade, we've implemented the MYP this year. Next year, each major core department has about 30 sections available teaching sort of units. And they'll dedicate 15 of those to 9th and 10th grade combined. And next year, just with an income, they'll probably dedicate more to the 9th grade and a few less to the 10th grade. And then when we get into the 11th and 12th grade, they'll also have 15 sections for those two grades. Interestingly, next year, as you are aware, the 12th grade will not be eligible for IB. It's a 2-year program, so it will start with next year's 11th graders. So we'll still have to offer some of the sort of quote-unquote old courses from the program of studies. So, for example, this year we're doing 2 sections of AP Calculus. We probably won't have the need to do AP Calculus 1. However, from those 2 sections, we'll probably have at least a section of AP Calculus 2. So that will run next year. There'll be some other courses from sort of the old curriculum that we'll have to run for seniors next year. As we look down the road, we will be able to constrict courses more, take the older courses off the books, and we'll be running the standard level and higher level courses for grades 11 and 12 for all of our students. In terms of looking at areas where I think we can use some savings or achieve some savings, one area is in mathematics. This past year, we had a resignation very late in the school year, and because I didn't need to fill that position, I left it vacant. So there's a position that I won't need to put in the budget for next year, so that will come out. I also expect that I'll be able to do some consolidation with some of our regular ed paraprofessional positions. And although at this point in the year, and it starts to get tenuous and it can change, I have a sense that we can make a slight reduction in special education and paraprofessionals. And then finally, I'm aware of 2 possible retirements. However, I'm not really thinking that that's going to help us in the budget process, because in all likelihood won't hear any commitments in terms of retirement until much later in the school year, so it probably won't help us. So that's where I am. In terms of the school, I think you see it in the report that I wrote. I'm pleased and really excited for our teachers. We've had a bunch of change at the high school this year. We have a longer school day, thanks to you folks and the superintendent. We have used that we have a flex time in the middle of the day where students are able to go to their own teachers to get extra help. Or if they can go, we have some things like open gym. We do a lot of counseling, and with the small group work for students to deal with issues such as grief and things like that. And we're continually hoping to expand that. It's proved a real bonus for students to go in and get extra help and to get some work done during the school day. That's been really exciting. Our whole schedule has changed and has created some real positives, and also has shown us some areas where we probably have to tweak it at some point. So we've been studying that recently. Again, I'm very proud of the work that the teachers have done. As I mentioned in my written report, we did some professional development work last year and last week, right before Thanksgiving. And teachers are really working hard, putting it together. One of the other benefits of the schedule this year, we have collaborative planning time, so each department can spend their time with everyone there to talk and work through and do some of the unit planning. Peter so nicely talked a little bit, alluded to in his presentation. some real positive things that are going on in the school.
Thank you. And board members, just if folks have questions, note them, and we're going to save them for the end. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. First, the work this year that the middle school teachers have done has just been incredible, and especially in collaboration with the high school. The MYP work is just incredible. And we appreciate Bill and his faculty and staff's willingness to figure all the logistics out with us. It's been a great year. The big changes at the middle school this year, as we started implementing MYP, our incoming 7th grade, so this year's current 7th grade, all students are taking language acquisition, which we used to call world language, and so students are taking either French or Spanish. Unfortunately, because of our constraints of our language acquisition teaching staff, we weren't able to give all 7th graders their first choice of language. And so 27 students wanted to have Spanish, were not able to, so they do have French this year. The other big change for us this year was that with MYP, all students have performing arts. And in the past, those of you who have older students, students could take band, of course, but they didn't have to. And under MYP, all students have a music or a performing arts requirement. And so we now have a general music class. And it is just, I know many of you have visited, it is a joy to see. We now have all the students who are not taking the band or choir are learning the guitar. And they're learning the music they want to learn. And so today when I was in there at one point, there were 13 different songs going, but they are having a great time with it. And it's really, and Rob DeBruin, our music teacher, has done a great job making that fun for kids. These were kids that didn't want to do this, and now they stampede down the hall to get to general music. Our units of inquiry are great. We're enjoying seeing the kids use their language and their learner profile. The other unexpected benefit in our schedule this year, 8th graders who did not take language acquisition had an extra block in their day. And so they are doing what we call PIPs, personal interest projects. And last Thursday and Friday week exhibition, we had crayfish traps. We had a model of a working crossbow. We had art that was just beyond belief. We had music, we had environmental projects. All students that planned their own units of inquiry and just have done great work. And we will be exhibiting the next batch in about 12 weeks if anybody visits us. Currently, we have 271 students at the middle school, and that includes 10 students from Rochester and 12 students who moved in unexpectedly over the summer. And so right now, our anticipated numbers for next year are 252, but that does not count any students from Rochester or anyone moving in over the summer. We know that as we look at next year, the middle school will need some additional language acquisition times, instructional times, and that really seems to be the piece that would be an addition to the middle school, although Peter and I have talked about, as you all know, the middle school does have a waiver for 0.5 library media specialists this year, and that with the emphasis on the library as a learning hub in the NYP, that it may be wise to look at going to a 0.8. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Now we can go to
I expect to go first, Bill threw me off. So at Bridgeport, we have about 80 students this year. We're predicting it'll be about the same, that includes pre-K. We're predicting it'll be about the same next year, but the pre-K numbers are a little trickier to predict, especially since we include and we open it up to kiddos in other communities within the district. So we're expecting we max it out at, this year we're at 20. We have 14
4-year-olds 5 days a week. A couple of those are Shoreham kiddos, and then the rest are residents of Bridgeport. And then we have 3 3-year-olds that come Monday and Tuesday, and 3 3-year-olds that come Wednesday and Thursday. Our program is, the number, we can have 17 in there, in that space at any given time per licensing regs. So we have 20 that we serve throughout the week. We did have a waiting list this year, and we did have to turn families away because we maxed out our numbers. So again, we predict this is going to do the same next year. We have a pre-K program, a straight K, and then the rest of our grades are combined, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6. I predict the same for next year. I don't see any significant staffing changes coming for us. Every classroom is onto their second PYP unit, and across the board, we've been working really hard with the learning profile. I'm talking a lot as a staff about whether or not to pick one particular attribute to focus on. We've noticed that communicator is something that really targeting that one for a while would be a benefit to our kids in many, many ways. So we're looking at how that might work. We've spent, this is my 4th year there, we've spent the 3 years I've been there really working on our internal climate and culture as a staff. And we're looking a lot this year at how to reach out to the community. So we've been really intentional this year at tracking things like attendance at open house, parent-teacher conferences, really making sure we've had at least one face-to-face between classroom teacher and all of our families early on in the year. We had our Thanksgiving meal. We're working with our PTO. Last year, Dana Allen, who is our school-based clinician, and Ava McDonough, our school nurse, did a series of parent nights and had pretty good attendance at those, and they were very well received. So we're about to kick off another series of those. So December 12th, they'll be doing the first of the series as a potluck, inviting parents in, really getting some feedback about what topics parents are interested in hearing about. Along with that, we'll be inviting Annie Burmeister, who is from Women's Safe and who has done the Act 1 training with our students, to be there to talk to parents or answer questions. And from that night and the feedback from parents, they'll build a series of events to go over the next couple of months. Community suppers are starting in Bridgeport, and the staff from the school host one of those suppers later in the year. We did our first session of after-school clubs, all led and facilitated by staff volunteers. So again, we're just really working to strengthen those connections within the community. I did that. Spanish has been off to an excellent start with our kiddos this year. It's a program that we're really working to refine as far as the length of classes and what ages they're working with. But the kiddos are enjoying it. We're starting to see it in the classrooms also.
Thank you, Jen.
Too many things, so try to a little bit about Ripton. Things are going really well. We have 52 students from K through 6. We anticipate about the same. We have a 6th grade group of 8, and don't anticipate too many changes for next year. At this point, we still have 4 classrooms, 4 classroom teachers. The implementation of IB has been going well. Most of us, all the elementary schools are going to be working towards authorization next year. So we'll be rolling out all 6 units of the program of inquiry. So this year we're doing 3. We're committed to doing 3. And next year we're going to commit to doing 6. So teachers are really doing a lot of collaborative work this year, which is great. So many of our small schools only have 1 teacher in each grade or grade band. So the fact that they work monthly with other grade level teachers throughout the district has been really beneficial, and they're getting a lot out of that. I've mentioned a few things that we're working on in the newsletter. So one of the things that we haven't done before that other schools have is the Shakespeare It's Elementary. And that's coming up in a couple weeks. So 5th and 6th graders have been working closely with Salisbury, 5th and 6th. I think, yes, 5th and they're gonna, I think, Shoreham, Cornwall? On the 13th is a big performance, so I haven't been there for it. It's gonna be pretty fun. And that's part of their, I think, different schools are probably using that in a different way to integrate it into their theme studies, but we're focusing on how we express ourselves. They're examining the art of Shakespeare, and it's neat. We had Clint Bierman there today, who was working on the music. Is that his last name? Clint. I think he lives here in Shoreham, doesn't he? It's like a famous musician in this community, so it was pretty fun. We also are working with Ann Burmeister for Act 1, sexual violence prevention, personal safety work. We're doing work with Jackie Nino around bullying, anti-bullying, and friendship skills. And we continue to be a PBIS school, so we focus on, we have a little fair that's helping kids remember to be on track. So we do a lot around that. I think for next year, what we need to figure out might just have to do with our busing. The busing changed this year, and that's created a little challenge because we don't have two buses for the Hancock and Granville kids. So our afternoon dismissal is complicated. We have a 3 o'clock dismissal and a 3:45 dismissal. So we kind of have an extended day for everybody, which has required some staffing. And it's something we might have to look at, but we do still very much enjoy having the Hancock Granville students come. I think we have 9 or 10 tuition students.
Hi, Jen.
Let's see, we have 78 students this year in Cornwall, although I believe we're getting 2 more after Christmas. So it's hard to, the numbers are always changing. So for next year, right now, I'm anticipating 30 that may be eligible for UPK as 3 and 4-year-olds, although obviously not at Cornwall, and then 79 students enrolled. I would say over the past 4 years, we've been pretty accurate in our projections. 1 year, I think we were over by 1 student overall in the school, but other years we've had people move in, and so like this year, we anticipated about 70, and we're at 78. So, and we look at class design and multi-age classes. So this is the first year where we have 2 multi-age classrooms. We look at that as a staff every March or early April. We have a list of things that we look at, and I know that when you all look at numbers, you'll probably look at numbers, but as a staff, we have a whole bunch of factors that we take into account to think about combined classes, and I just wanted you to know what they were so that you have a sense of like the discussions that we have, because they're really rich discussions. We look at capacity, developmental appropriateness, the effect of the combination on the whole school, flexibility, gender balance, group dynamics, and the uniqueness of certain classes or groups within classes. Time for teachers to be prepared, because I think changing grades often is challenging, and so wanting teachers to be prepared. The math, literacy, and social emotional proficiency of the students in the class. We're trying to maximize learning time and decrease transitions, and also then, of course, the size of the classes. So there are a lot of factors in there. Not always easy discussions, but they're usually really rich discussions to have, and they build community rather than pull it apart. And I would say that Jen and Tracy talked about culture and climate is And that's been one of our school foci for the past 3 years. And really this year we have 2 new classroom teachers and a number of other new staff. And so it's been a strong focus among the staff to develop a strong culture in a different way. And so we've really looked at a lot of the systems that we've had and said, well, we don't have to do it this way just because of tradition. We need to do it in a way that works for us. And so we've redesigned some systems that work better for the current staff rather than sticking with tradition. And we'll see how things turn out, but they seem to be working pretty well so far. And we've been thinking a lot about the culture and climate for students as well as staff, and we've focused at both levels this whole fall on civility and what does civility mean, as well as caring and being principled. We're going to talk on Wednesday at our all-school meeting that we have once a week also about being reflective and communicators, because we're seeing a lot of that. We just aren't necessarily recognizing it in our PBIS system with caught e-slips. So when kids are caring or principled, they get caught caring, and a note of what they were caught doing gets sent home. And then when we fill up a chart of their names, we have a celebration. Just have costume/pajama party. And then just really focusing on the fact that, like, at school, we're a big community and together we're stronger than we are as individuals. And so you see a lot of that. You see a lot of multi-age. The 6th graders are choosing to have lunch with kindergartners. It's a rotation because it's super popular. They want to have lunch with the kindergartners. They play, there's a lot of multi-age play and kind of an advisory type group during all-school meeting. And we'll continue that work next year. We'll also continue our farm to school work and really connecting with the community in a meaningful way, as well as focusing on resiliency and restorative practices, which we begin to integrate into our classrooms, so that we're trying to include everybody in a way and recognize that everybody has strengths, and rather than seeing good kids or bad kids, but that really everybody is a part of the community and brings an important aspect to it.
Thank you very much.
So we had 6 teachers who retired last year, and we were anticipating a large change this year. We filled 5 positions. However, it turned out to be, I was expecting a little bit of a bumpy ride at the start of our school year, but we have been on a wonderfully smooth transition and productive journey. I think everybody's fit in really beautifully into the school, and all the new people have added a lot to our community, so it's been a wonderful transition. We have right now 98 students. Last year we had 108, and this year we lost 3 families who moved out of state, and 8 children with them. Anyway, so 3 families had a huge impact. However, we have had children moving in. We welcomed a new child last week, and we welcomed a new child about 2 weeks ago. So that is still happening. We have a preschool, kindergarten combined this year. So far we used to offer a 3- and 4-year-old program and a kindergarten class. With our reductions, we decided to try a pre-K. And in that situation, we lost our 3-year-old program. So now we're serving 4- and 5-year-olds, and then 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We have 2 5-6 classes. As Jen just explained, sometimes we take into consideration the makeup of groups to try to really optimize their learning opportunities. So we ended up with 2 5-6s as a combination. One of the things that we tried this year that is new and has also offered us great opportunity is the idea of working in grade bands. So although we have single grade classes, the teachers are collaborating. So 1st and 2nd grade are one band, 3rd and 4th are another, 5 and 6 are together. And they have collaborative planning time together, and they are working on their IB units together. And so because we are a small school and don't get as much opportunity to collaborate across grades, we found that this is a great way to optimize opportunities and be able to really create a sense of team. And it's worked out really beautifully. Let's see, our class sizes vary from 10 to 20. Next year, we have some considerations to, I'm thinking and exploring the idea of trying to maintain a preschool program. We had this year a grant that allowed our preschool program to be full-time. And so I'm studying about trying to figure out what between tuition and subsidies, whether or not we can maintain a full-time preschool program, which is a great advantage to the children. We also we changed Amy Clapp's position from a dedicated science teacher to a grade 4 teacher as part of the reductions. And that's been a change, and we are adjusting to that loss of dedicated science time, but the teachers are taking that on, and we have among our new teachers, we also have some really strong science teachers, and so I think that's where we're figuring that out as we go along this year. Let's see. We also have a community partnership team that is parents and staff, and they have just gotten together to plan some family engagement activities that are going to be fun and around the grade level bands. And so we'll have potlucks and activities to bring families together, get to know each other, build community, and then from that, hopefully be able to support each other more in the things that they need. Already I see some of those partnerships happening with the new families that are coming in. We are going to start with really fun engagement opportunities and move into a parent series around resiliency with the Addison County Resiliency Project and also internet safety. So we're trying to create some parent learning opportunities. We are moving back into the Early Act group, which is a partnership with Rotary for service projects. Our whole school participates, and we're reorganizing a little bit this year. The 5th and 6th graders will be the officers of that club, and each grade level band will take a project and work on a project on their own. So that's a wonderful opportunity for agency. It's really student-based, and they decide how they want to do their project. And we continue to always work on a positive school climate. We started the year refreshing our responsive classroom skills and our commitment to the positive behavior and supports. And it really, that's something that I think you can see when you walk into the school is that consistent approach and gentle way of being. Our attribute that we're all working on as a school is balanced. We also offer, you've been seen doing this slips, just like I stole those from Jen. And they're a wonderful reminder to students of the things that we notice. And so we're having a lot of conversations right now around what it means to be balanced in lots of different ways. And kids are being asked to think of what they can do to bring balance into their lives and the lives of others. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. So I think that's it.
Great. Thank you, Fernanda.
Fortunately, I went a little bit earlier, so I think I can keep my portion pretty brief. And a lot of the things that are happening in the other buildings are happening here as well, like the Shakespeare project, or we went to Starbase. And we pay attention to our social emotional wellness, and we try to align PBIS thinking with that. Something that we try to do is take advantage of the size of the school when we do that and have school-wide themes and not drag anything out across the whole year. So we try to connect everything through our B image so kids know that belonging is an important part. So we have a B coupon that we use to acknowledge when a student's doing the right thing. And we'd like to have a focus for about 6 to 8 weeks, a celebration, and then move on to something else. So at the start of the school year, it was our 3 R's: respect yourself, respect others, respect the environment, and how that looks everywhere. So that's just setting up basic school expectations and behavior. October, it was choose kind, which is asking people to be welcoming and appreciative of diversity and choose kind. So we celebrated that at the end of October. And November was a continuation of that. When we come back after break, we're going to do the right thing, and we're going to be connecting that to the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday and look at it through the IB lens of principled and courageous. And so that's kind of how we try to work as a school, teaching kids that they're valued and how to be respectful human beings. Last year, just like with Cornwall, we saw a shift where we added another multi-age classroom. So before that, we had a 4-5 classroom. This year, we have a 3-4 classroom and a 5-6 classroom. And then it's a straight second grade, straight first grade, straight kindergarten. Kindergarten through 6th, we have 81 students this year. And if you were to look at our numbers, it's kind of like a pyramid. There's a lot more younger students than there are older students. And at the start of the school year, it looked like this coming year, if we keep a 3-4 and a 5-6, our 3-4 would be 26 students, which when I'm thinking of a multi-age classroom, that is less, but that's a large number when you're juggling 2 different grade levels and so forth. But a few families have moved out of the district, and 2 families look like they'll be moving out. So we're looking at 23 for next year, which is still a large number. So that's something just in a very similar process, like Jen said in Cornwall, we're taking a look at discussing what's the right decision for our 3-4. Our 5-6 will still be around 18 next year. As we look, if families stay in Shoreham, there's a bubble coming up through. So there are 14 first graders, there's 18 kindergartners. We're looking at 21 kindergartners next year if we get all of our students. Typically, we'll look at a number and it'll always be 1 or 2 high. So it may not be 21, but it's safe to assume that next year's kindergarten will also be a robust number. So then if we were to put that out, you'd be looking at 26 in that 3-4, and then you'd be looking at 32, and then a very large number that doesn't fit in the room. So, but right now, for what's the right blend for next year, we're in a conversation about that.
Thank you, Mike.
Good evening. We've had a lot of change at Mary Hogan. We had 12 faculty members this year that are new, so I don't think we're going to have any retirements this year. We have 4 sections of first grade, 4 second grade, and then grades 3 through 6 are 3 sections currently. We also have pre-K for the first time this year. That's been a nice addition. Even though they were here, they're now officially under our auspices. Let's see. We have 462 students right now. That's a bump of about 20. Over the course of the summer, we got a lot of students who came to our school. I think we'll probably have around the same, maybe a little bit lower. We have 61 6th graders leaving, and right now we have 42 kindergartners, so there might be a slight change in maybe either the first or second grade, depending on the configuration for the staffing. In regards to the paraprofessionals, we'll have to look at our service delivery model and see if that changes. Right now, it's just myself and the dean of students, but I've recommended to Dr. Burris that we go back to the previous leadership where we have a principal and assistant principal for next year. We are also doing the town hall theater with Shakespeare's Elementary, except this year we'll be combining with Bridport and roping them in, so we're really looking forward to having that collaboration with the Bridport students. We have Spanish grades 3 through 6. They have it twice a week, and we have second graders once a week. So I think just as you heard some of the other principals talk about figuring out, do we want to have Spanish at kindergarten and first grade, and then what would that look like? Because that would be a staff member of some proportion, because our current Spanish teacher is pretty much maxed out. Next year, One thing that I would like to see is some of the outlying schools have a what I need block or an intervention block. I'd like to see if there's somewhere we can incorporate something like that at Mary Hogan. And off the top of my head, I think that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Steve.
I feel like we should have a little action break here. We have 55 students this year, and I think we'll have 55 next year. And we'll have 4 classrooms, as we've had for many years, since we were 100 students. We've gone back to 4 classrooms for 7 grades, and that's what we do. We make those decisions much the same way I think the other schools do. We have absolutely no problem in terms of thinking about combining classes, because we really think all teachers should understand curriculum well below the grade level they teach, and it's beyond that, so that if we have that, we're easily can move from one class to the other. It's not a huge preparation issue. So that's just our history. That's how we've done it. I think the piece that for us this year, we have 13 new staff members. And that has to do with assistants having retired last year or changed positions or gone to Spain. We have teachers that shifted positions. We have almost all new support staff in terms of school counselor, nurse, speech and language. We have 3 people providing services in that role. So those are short chunks of people, and we have and special educators to us. So we've gone through lots and lots of change this year. The community of core staff with the new teachers has really come together very, very well. And in terms of having a school, a thinking culture within our community, that's continued very nicely. People have continued that and have been able to sustain it. The part that there were 2 sort of questions that we were being asked. One was about the community, and I think I've written extensively about the school partnership, the community partnership, which has been really an excellent introduction. The process this year has been really wonderful. We have many parent community events. The most important, I think, is that we're having a monthly potluck supper, which allows, and we always provide childcare for that, so it allows parents to come together and have dinner and just talk and just be a community together. This time we're doing one where we're inviting people who haven't come, so that we're just like trying to extend that. And then Elizabeth Burrows, the school counselor, has been sharing some information. Last time it was mostly about growth mindset. This time we're adding zones of regulation. But she just puts that out, and then there's an opportunity for parents to really talk about challenges and ideas and suggestions and ways of supporting each other and our children in becoming really agentic people who see themselves as effective and able to meet their goals. So that's been a really, really wonderful addition, and I think a very thoughtful process that the partnership has taken on. In terms of IB, which was our other question, I think the thing that's most wonderful is that the profile is becoming really ingrained in everybody's language about themselves and thinking about embodying that. That's adults and children. It's really important that it's something that we all take on. And so I think it's something that we talk about as a staff and how we're doing that. It's something that the students are thinking about in that way. When we had the review team last 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the students who took them on a tour, the team on a tour, and the students who were interviewed really talked about that in a very, very personal and in a way that showed they were really owning that as part of what we were about and what ACSD was about. The other thing that's been really exciting to me is that I wrote about our Engineering of the Month project, which really kicked off today. And that has been something that it was actually, we started before we got involved in IB, but now that we're doing IB is really informing that process. So within it, we're really focusing on key concepts from IB. We're using the primary attribute of open-mindedness, because as the children design, this week for 2 days, they're designing on their own, and then they'll join a team and need to be sharing their designs with the team and putting those together. And then at the end, because it's a series of sort of Rube Goldberg systems that they're creating, they're going to have to put them together so that they work together as a whole school. So we'll be using systems engineering, putting systems together. But it will mean that everybody will have to have the flexibility to make some shifts in their design to make the larger design work. And so that's just been a really exciting thing to see how that's fit together with focusing on something like the attribute of open-mindedness. So our new theme, and I know Peter enjoyed this term too, or this phrase, was that we're trying to learn to hold our thoughts lightly. That we believe in what we're doing, we have these ideas, but when we then need to make something work, we need to be able to flex and take in new information.
Thank you very much.
I should say one other thing, because Spanish has come up. For all of the elementary schools, we really need to look at how to make that work so that we don't hire a teacher and then them being going to 4 schools and having really complex days. We're going to need to match up with the middle school, and Mary Hogan is also looking at their program. So that's going to be something on the table.
Thank you. So I don't know if any of you noted any questions, but I do just have a few, and they're very quick that I jotted down. I'll kind of go in order. Bill, just do all 11th graders next year, do they start, can they participate in a DP at that point, or is that?
They are able to if they want to.
Okay.
They don't have to, it's voluntary.
Right, but it's available to them starting next year. Jen, how big is the waiting list for pre-K at Bridport?
I think we had 3 or 4, I'm not entirely certain, because some did find other placements and pulled themselves off. But
And
there were at least 2 that didn't find a placement that I know of that we weren't able to.
And is that waiting list just Bridport families, or is that?
No.
Okay.
And there might have been a Salisbury family and then the Shore family also. There were 3-year-olds.
And then just finally, Tracy, you talked about the busing challenge for dismissal. Is the 3:45 just to accommodate the Hancock and Granville kids?
It is, but we decided, I didn't feel like it was fair to require Hancock Granville kids to need the bus to stay 45 minutes after everybody else could go home. So we call it 2 dismissals. So we have a 3 o'clock bus for Victon kids and 3 o'clock pickup for anybody. And then we have like a bonus 45 minutes where kids get a veggie snack and they go outside. And then there's another Ripton bus and a Hancock Granville bus.
Okay.
So that, and then we have an after-school program. So that 45 minutes is something that's been a bit of a juggle in terms of coverage. But to answer your question, it's because there's only a 3:45 bus for the Hancock Granville.
Right, yeah, okay.
And we do.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do have through STA, who's the parent company of Betcha. I mentioned this, I think, a few months ago, but we are getting a full audit and survey of all of our towns, and they're going to run their high-tech software apparently this month. So that should be coming shortly. We've never looked again at our routes after we unified, and a lot of these routes were created with town lines in mind, so we think that there are some potential savings and efficiencies to be found.
Any other questions for folks? Yes, Chip.
To Mary Hogan. Per Jen's comment in the first part of the meeting, last year when we had sort of the preliminary parts of the budgets, and there was quite a bit of discussion about paraprofessionals and the numbers that would be reduced, and the sort of discussion that entailed from that was that because Mary Hogan was big and had potentially challenging mixes of students, that those issues, you couldn't cut that. And I guess we didn't end up having to cut as many paraprofessionals out of the budget at the end. But can you comment a little bit on potential changes or needs per Jen's question? I asked that particularly because I've heard it from a number of people who just relay it to me because of some of the disruptions that have occurred. I don't know anything about them personally, but I think to me that's an issue that does come up in school, especially from parents of kids who are being they are not the disruptors, but their day is being disrupted.
So before this year, we had 2 managed environment classrooms. In essence, it was a K2 and a 3 through 6, and each of those classrooms was the lead educator was a special educator, and then there was a behavioral interventionist from CSAC in there, and then possibly a paraprofessional or some other person who might have a little bit more skills in dealing with students with social and emotional learning challenges. The grade 3 through 6 classroom was disbanded for this year for multiple reasons. Can I talk about right now? But so we thought we were starting with a system with that we had planned over the course of the summer, but we had board-certified behavioral analysts that we had on staff that we were counting on who left right before school started. And we also had 2 other positions that were going to be a bit more skilled than just a general paraprofessional. And we couldn't fill one of those, so we started our model off with not the staffing that we thought we were going to have. So over the course of the few months, it was bumpy in September. The adjustment, I think, as you read in a couple of the things that I've provided to the board, we definitely have students who have either developmental trauma or neurological trauma. So we're trying to increase the skill set of the faculty and the staff on how to interact with those types of students because it's not going to change. One of the biggest ahas for me this year, even though I've been there 6 years previously as assistant principal, is that I think it's a topic that the teachers are at the front lines with, and they're trying to figure out what skill set they need in order to teach differently than, say, a decade or 15 years ago. So I don't think it's just the fact that the classroom was eliminated. I just think that the students some of our students are they're just different and have different kinds of needs, and so how to meet those needs. So in the interim, we've hired 2 behavioral specialists, so people who have some skills. They're just, I guess you could say, clinical hours away from being board-certified behavioral analysts, so they have a lot of skills and experience. So they've just started within the last couple of weeks. So we're seeing, we're building a system, it's like we're in the bus while we're building the bus. So it's created some challenges, yet we have some faculty members who have been working with Dave Melnick, and I think the new faculty members combined with the returning faculty members, we have a can-do attitude. So we're just really discovering how we can make this work. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Part of what you were, I think all of you were trying to do was, what are changes that we need for next year? And I think that was, in a general way, asking about that.
Well, one of the things that we're looking at Mary Hogan is not only just what's it look like for our school, but then in the larger context of ACSD, what's that going to look like? And then will some of the resources at Mary Hogan be able to possibly be moved elsewhere? Or, there are a lot of questions I have, but right now I'm just focusing on the now and how can we navigate this.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jen?
I know that the B3 program is 2 years, they can only, the seniors can't do the whole program.
Jen, nice and loud so everybody over here can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So super awkward.
Pass her that.
Can the 12th graders take any courses next year? And can if they pass, if there's an exam, can those courses go toward a college credit for one?
Yes, they can take a course if they choose to, and if they do well enough on the exams, they actually get a special certificate from IB. and that which is meaningful to colleges in terms of the students getting a break or being able to advance in the coursework.
Fantastic. And the shore enrollment trend is fascinating to me. Shore enrollment trend. Are new families entering or moving to Shoreham, or is it existing families that just happen to have kids that are now entering?
I would say in the past 5 years, there's been younger families settling in Shoreham, and they're now arriving into kindergarten. But if we look at that trend, and it is a bubble that's moving up through, I think last year's birth rate was around 10 students or less. So one of the things when you're working with a small school is, at Mary Hogan, you could say probably 40% of kids will be like this, or 60, you know, and it will play out every year relatively, but you get pretty wild rolls of the dice when your sample pool is the size of the smaller schools.
Yeah. So it's not that you're hearing that a ton of families are like, well, going to Shoreham, it just happens to be the bump in the birth rate that.
But I'd like to rephrase my answer and say it's our excellent school.
I'm sure that has a lot to do with it too. There may be some families moving, but you just think it's a bump, a vehicle bump.
A multi-year bump, though,
Yeah.
you know, it's for several years.
Yes. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, I had a question. Let me ask Jen, because then that way I can direct it at the middle school and at the camera.
Like a role play or something?
So I did some back-of-the-envelope calculations with the numbers that you're looking at for next year, and I got just taking your core teachers. There are still 4 core teams at the middle school, right? And so that gives a ratio of about 15 students per teacher. Is that correct?
Yes, it is if it's just a pure take the number. If we look at right now, if next year, if we hit 4 core academic teams again, the core academic class sizes based upon our current schedule would be 16 to 18, depending on 7th or 8th grade, because of the number of sections we have. So those numbers look a little, those class sizes look a little larger than if you just do the straight division.
And that's only with the core teachers, that's with none of the specials.
Right.
Okay.
Anything further? Well, thank all of you for coming out. It was actually very helpful. A little too short for, we could sit and talk with all of you for a long time. But thanks for coming out and providing the information to us. Next on our agenda, an update on our strategic plan. It's the mid-year report.
You say they can go now.
Well, yes, so yes, you certainly don't need to stick around, but you're welcome to, as always. All right, so we are now
Did you say that to the camera?
on the.
I think so. That's kind of
Would folks like a 5-minute break?
Yeah, that's-
5-minute break. Guys.
5-minute break. Nice.
Back after our 5-minute break. All right, are you prepared to, were you planning to speak or just presenting us the written material?
So
Please do.
let me just give some context for those that have not seen one of these before. We are currently in year 4 of our strategic plan. And every year we have a mid-year report and a final report. So if you go online on our website, you can see past examples of our reports. The purpose of the mid-year report really is to give a narrative in terms of where the work is heading. We realized in putting this together in the first year or two that it made a lot more sense to have the quantitative data at the end and not try to make summative evaluations right now. So this is more of a formative document. It's a chance to just let the board know kind of where we are, the work that we're doing. It highlights the work around those 3 foundational goals that have really been the pillar of the work that we've done over the last 4 years. So we're happy to answer any questions that you might have about the report. We didn't prepare a presentation just because we felt like with the agenda where it is, it would be better to kind of answer questions that you might have about it. And we've been talking about a number of the different initiatives and the data within the report over the months. So some of those things may look familiar from board reports or other places as well. And I think some of it you heard tonight from the principals. I feel like overall, as I look at the work we're doing in educational success, we've covered a massive amount of ground, really, even this year. And we're really, I think in terms of our development, both of International Baccalaureate and the other systems work that we're doing that's tied to ed success, I think we've made some strides. I think we're looking right now at time and the amount of time we have for professional development and balancing that with the needs of buildings. And so we're going through a process right now, I think, of making sure that we do have enough time to do the work that we need to do around trauma. We've been working with Dave Melnick. Vicky's been leading work on developing systems to support all students. That's really critical work within the IB framework. So that is also articulated within the report as well. Community work is I think, flourishing. I'm really excited about it. I think I kind of want to talk about what we're doing here to other folks in Vermont and elsewhere, because I think I see it having a big impact. The community partnership teams are really powerful, and I think the model really fits Vermont too. There are a lot of districts across the state that are wondering, what do we do now with towns that used to have school boards, and they used to focus on the school board as the place of ownership of the school, and as boards have dissolved and will continue with the state board's recent push to merge the final holdouts, there's a vacuum, I think, in a lot of communities and a lot of schools. So I think that model is having a big impact. We've got 4 of our 7 towns have partnership teams, and we're looking to increase that going into next year. So that work is powerful and meaningful.
Any questions?
I just want to make a comment.
Yeah.
I think it's really impressive that all this is going on and it's so well organized. Because it really defines what's going on instead of just blather. I mean, it's amazing. So I just want to thank you and Caitlin and Vicki for taking the time to really put this together.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really impressed.
Yeah,
I do the least amount of work. They do more work than I do.
It's obvious that
It's not.
but I just think you've done also a good job. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pile on a little bit as well and just say that, a lot of sort of strategic plans get put on a shelf and don't get referred to, but I appreciate the fact that we continually come back to it. We continually come back to the mission and vision and really make these reports and these plans valuable and an important tool.
And timely, they're kept up.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Great. Yes, Steve.
I did have a question. Is the staffing segment, is that, it seems, for lack of a better word, vague? Is that intentional, or?
What do you mean by this?
Data?
What do you mean?
It just says, we'll continue to consider these key equity indicators in the third year developing a unified district budget around staffing. Is that? We keep hearing about the declining enrollments and things like that.
Right.
The way we need to solve that is by staff, and then this kind of doesn't say anything either way about that. Are those conversations happening?
Are you talking about?
We're just not ready to talk about them yet, or?
So we're not, right now, going into FY20, this pertains to our budget development, we're not looking at making any drastic changes. We feel like, given the the impact on school cultures of making some of these changes, that for us to make a change midstream with the master plan would create too much tumult in a community that would be really challenging to build a change and then yank it back this way and move it that way. So going into FY20, our thought is it's best if we can address the really transparent equity issues that we have. So if we're, and class size tends to be the one that we look at, that's, I think, the most easy to understand, the most logical, we're addressing that. The other inconsistencies where we have one school that has a 0.6 of this and another school has a 0.3 of that, and some of those kinds of things, we're in stasis for this year, waiting to complete the master plan to see where we're investing, facilities, kind of future planning. We're waiting to go through that process before making any big changes, which I think makes sense. So there is some vagary to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's abstract more than it is specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. If there are no other questions, Jen, are you prepared to give us a little bit of an update?
I'm totally not prepared for much at this point, but I can talk a little bit.
A little bit would be great.
I can if you want.
Yeah. It's up to you.
So the steering committee met, last Wednesday. So we had all met, well, I wasn't there, you had all met. I was waiting by the pool for a phone call that never came. But
I blame her.
What's that? No, I haven't made an official connection. It was fine. I was like, just
We were reading your emails.
somebody, I'm here. So I missed out on that, so I apologize. And then, but I got the update from that. So basically, and then I heard about your meeting. So you probably know more about it than I do. And then we had the Facilities Master Plan Steering Committee meeting, which I think was productive, kind of a recap of where things are and where to go next. So the short version is there was some compilation of the data that you all have access to that you were welcome to look at before this meeting. I'm not sure, it came after the initial board pack invitation, so you may or may not have seen it or had a chance to look at it, but I encourage you to look at that. And you'll probably, if you have or have not, there is a third column, I think, maybe a fourth column, that indicates what of the guiding questions, I believe, that the comment may or may not speak to. And that to help us to frame, basically, our report back out of at least this portion of the data. And it's, we also talked about in our steering committee meeting that this is just one portion, right? So the steering committee was charged with the community feedback. And there is obviously a lot more data that will go into our draft of the master plan that we all need to keep in mind, and that as a planning and engagement committee will continue to discuss of what information we need that may not be public information that we might need to consider. So I believe our group hasn't discussed meeting again before the next scheduled meeting, so I think we'll just stay on target with that and really diving into this data and coming in with making our plan to move forward and how we're going to start drafting the master plan. In the short term, there was a letter to the editor drafted by the communications committee of the Facilities Master Plan Committee. There's just so many committees and so many committees, but it's 3 people that are just kind of on the Facilities Master Plan side that are tasked with communication.
and before and after, so basically getting people to the forums. And now one of the pieces on our timeline was to report something back out to the committee or community. And at this point, we felt comfortable with just a letter to the editor, thanking people for coming and kind of laying out the next steps. So I shared that with the committee about an hour or two before the meeting tonight. So many of you might not have had a chance to look at it. And once you have, I'm not sure what the process, do you all want to see it before it goes to the editor? Do we need a vote on something like that? I'm not sure about that process.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
So let's see, I think, do we have a policy, Perry?
That's what I was
We did.
running through. I don't
We had a
think-
legacy policy that we don't have anymore.
As a board.
Okay.
And I think we can empower the chair to do it. That's what I remember.
All right. I've seen the letter, Peter's seen the letter, it's great, so. If people are comfortable with that, then Jen's name's going on it, she's really been the spearhead of the work here.
Well, and I had asked my group that, because I didn't draft the letter, it was another member of our committee, and I actually didn't even do feedback. It was, a lot happened this week, and so I was kind of seeing it, but didn't put any mental energy toward it. And so the one thing that I mentioned to the committee was, I see that they put my name, as the signer. It does say on behalf of the school board, the ACSD school board, but it says my name, and does it have to say one person's name? Should it say the whole planning and engagement committee? I wasn't sure about that, so I don't know how you all feel about that. I'm not at all trying to say, like, here's my letter to everybody, and it's all me, because that's not how I feel at all. They did that, and so now I feel like now I have to figure out how that feels.
How many people are there?
Well, I'll just say, as the person who used to read the letters to the editor, the paper definitely prefers one name on behalf of.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I figured they would want a name and not just an organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
And your name is Larry.
Yes.
Definitely just your name.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, great. So then I'll just, if I can, I'll give you the planning and engagement committee another day or two to just kind of look at it more carefully, just to make sure that we feel like we're good. And then I'll give the okay, or I'll do something, send it to the letter, send it to the Addison Cabinet or something.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just one more drive-by, I'll take through me before we do that.
Great, will do. So yeah, so I guess that's sort of my take on things at this point. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, I'm happy to talk about them.
So in terms of going through the feedback, are you including the online survey, or is it just the stuff that was written on the sticky notes and stuff?
That data that you have there is just the sticky notes at this point.
Yeah.
The online data is available, or the survey data is available. I had shared a link. Apparently there's a shareable link through SurveyMonkey, which I was super excited to find, because I have to pay to download the data, which I'm debating on doing, depending on how much data we have. It's all just open-ended responses, so there's not really, it's not like I have to tabulate something.
Right.
So I think that's fine at this point. I can share that link with all of you if you would like it, if you want to get into that detail, or I can just put it we have a shared drive for the Planning and Engagement Committee that I think you all have access to, right? Maybe I'll just put the link in there rather than emailing you all and let you choose if you want to be in there. And then there was also an email inbox that I believe only had up to three responses, less than a handful. And I don't think that data has been put anywhere else yet at this point. I haven't seen that
How
data
many
yet.
people have responded so far to the survey?
About 30.
And is that survey still live?
It is. And that was one of the things, so I guess I should tell you a little bit more. So that letter talks about encouraging people to still add input in those various ways. And also, the committee felt very strongly about putting hard copies of the data available in the town. So before this letter goes in the paper, the superintendent's office, Sharon and Erica will work hard at printing and making little packets to put in local schools,
town clerk's offices and libraries. And so that letter directs people to go to those places to fill out the surveys and read about the data in person and or submit it online. And we chose January 4th, I think, as a close date, and that's the Friday after Christmas break. So we wanted to give people that opportunity to at least go through this month, but also not cut them a week or so short based on holiday breaks.
Jen, those packets are already at the elementary school. We delivered them today.
Look at that. Wow. So great.
Mary.
Yeah, I have a question. Is there a way to put that out like we do school closings? Just an email blast to all the parents?
That letter could possibly go through an email blast.
And I know the town of Middlebury, and I'm assuming other towns have an email blast too.
Or maybe a 5:30 a.m. phone call telling people to...
Yeah. That's from you, not me.
That's from our noted superintendent.
We hadn't talked about that. So I would think that it would be appropriate to perhaps be sent with a communication that you're sending if you're going to do a communique or something. Sometimes you do things like that, but it wasn't part of the communication plan. It was just the Addison Independent.
But I think when somebody opens their email and they see there's a link, then they can just press that link. It's a lot faster to get it done.
Yeah, and we did invite people at these forums to join the email distribution list. So, I should say we are sending it to those folks that came, that registered.
I think you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you talking about two different things? You're talking about the survey. You're talking about the responses.
To get more
we don't want
survey
people just to do the
responses.
survey without sort of seeing the data. So it's sort of all one piece.
Yep.
So this letter sort of talks about, here's the data online with the link to the survey.
Okay.
We don't want people just like to click on the survey and just say their ideas without sort of some of that background that people received at the community dialogue. So the recording of one of the dialogues is online, so people can see the data, they can see a dialogue if they want to hear more about it, and then do the survey. So that's why the paper versions are a packet. It's in your library or school. You can read some of the data. It'll give you, tell you about where more of that information is, as well as then the paper survey. So it's more than just we don't just want a high survey response rate, we want more thoughtful
I get that, and I'm just looking at the ACSD website, community dialogues, and all the links are in there.
Yep.
If something like this could be linked to an email to...
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
That letter basically has that link to that website, so that could be sent by the superintendent's office if they choose.
Yeah, it's an easy email.
Yeah.
Perry.
With all due respect to the superintendent, do all the principals send out a Friday letter?
They all send out a newsletter, but they're not all on Friday.
But once a week?
Or so.
Or not, some of them are like twice a month.
The reason I asked Tracy, the principal,
She has her Friday.
Every Friday, like clockwork. And it seems to me that would be a better source to have it come from the local leader that everyone knows, although they know me too, because you wake them up and talk about them.
Yeah.
So think about different ways of getting to the community.
Or both.
Or use both.
Both.
Yeah, it could be in both. Yeah, because I think that the list that comes out of the superintendent's office, like I was saying, has some community members that aren't necessarily attached to a school, which is great. But yeah, then to be followed up by people that might only see something from the school would be fantastic as well. So feel free.
I've put it in many different places with my communication. I feel like, and as the board, looking at the calendar and the timeline, looking towards the second dialogue in March, that we'll probably see a lot more community engagement as the board starts to look at the data and start saying things. Then we'll start to see, I think, a lot more action. One of the things that a lot of people have mentioned, and it's something that we're constantly dealing with, is we hear from the same people all the time.
Right.
And it's a challenge. So we want to hear from everybody, but we tend to design processes where certain kinds of people will come to them. So that's still, I think, something we need to keep in our mind as we go through this process too. Can I add a couple things off
Please.
this
Yes.
calendar? One of the changes that happened from last month to this month was that we decided that March was a much better date to do the second dialogue than February with the budget, and we might get equalized pupil in February. So, so March seemed like it was much more doable than February. So that is a change that has happened, and the steering committee felt pretty strongly about that. The next, kind of the next work for the steering committee is continuing to organize the data and to help the planning and engagement committee to suss out themes and kind of tease it and organize it so that it's comprehensible to, I think, both the board and the community, because I think it's important for the community to see all of this data that we're collecting as well. Then I think the real work is going to be both the planning and engagement committee and the board. As the steering committee is over here thinking about the next dialogue, the board is really going through a process of looking at the data, processing it together, and starting to figure out, at what shape are these, quote unquote draft recommendations going to take as we move towards March. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be important for everybody to be clear about how and where we're traveling, instead of seeing the data and then starting to jump and popcorn, but to really be thoughtful about it. Just because I think the following a strong process and protocol, I think with this will really help to provide the level of, I'm not sure if it's a recommendation, but the level of push in the process for the second dialogue for the community to engage at a deep level. So that's something that I think is being talked about in the Planning and Engagement Committee. The Steering Committee has talked about that as well.
Yeah, did this group see that calendar outline? I wasn't sure if that
I don't think so.
That was part of we were trying to get the data to come to you from that steering committee meeting, so I'm not sure. I'll try to figure out how to share that with you as well. So it's kind of laid out.
Would it be easier if maybe we share, if the central office could share all that stuff tomorrow, just in one?
Sure, that would be great. Yeah, because
Okay.
I wasn't sure what was going to be shared in board pack for this discussion, but I think, so that the calendar he's referring to is, just kind of lays out each of our next meetings, sort of what will happen at the board level, at the planning and engagement committee level, and at the steering committee level, to try to help us all sort of stay on track and for the timeline that we're anticipating. Like we said, March, for many reasons, obviously town meeting and budget is going to take a lot of the attention between now and then, and give the steering committee and our board enough time to prepare for the next push that I think people will really be interested in. And we want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that's going to be positively received.
All right.
I'm just remembering town meeting, but I was trying to decide whether it was appropriate following your comments. I think I have to write a separate chair.
Okay, got it.
This guy knows his policy.
All right, anything else to be brought up tonight's meeting for you?
Just one
Yes.
thing about Finance Committee relative to the questions, is that something you want to tentatively ask us to schedule?
Yeah, I was going to afterwards, I was going to suggest we meet next week.
Okay, I just, before we separate.
All right, so at our next meeting, we're supposed to be focusing on budget. We got some numbers issues. Do you feel that we can do that and have our committee meetings? Or are you thinking that we need a full-length board meeting?
But the 15th is a Saturday. Isn't that the day that the numbers are supposed to come out?
Yeah, that should come out Friday then.
They should come out Friday then.
Yeah.
So that would give us the weekend to get ready for Monday, which seems a little quick.
Well, we're planning on taking equalized pupil, plugging it in, and then showing the board, here's what it looks like. It could look beautiful, it could look ugly. So we don't know yet. So just presenting it as is, and then talking about a direction from there.
Yeah, so we're not going to have to make a lot of decisions in those 3 days. It's really a matter of being either surprised, horrified, or whatever.
Right. So in some ways it would be helpful either, if we do move committee meetings earlier, which is one option.
Yep.
I mean, it would be good for the finance committee to meet prior to that meeting.
No, I would like to meet next week, I think, just because.
Yeah, I'm saying both.
And then also.
I'm saying, yeah.
And then we'll have to decide
Yeah.
where we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can make that decision at our agenda meeting as well.
Okay.
Perry? So under other, I
Yes.
can say, I would really like us to have a crystal clear plan for what we communicate to the towns about town meeting and our role, especially in terms of budget, because last year I think there was some confusion. I think we were clear, actually, going out, but I think the towns expected us to do the same old thing, especially in places like Richmond.
And Salisbury.
And Salisbury.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I kept thinking it would be like a one-page thing that would be added to the town reports. I'm not even sure there should be anything. So.
Yes. Chip?
I would agree with you because it's been such a difference in the different towns from what I can understand. I mean, Ruth, of course, went to Middlebury and did that for 2 or 3 years in front of the large Middlebury town meeting, fairly detailed and many slides and the whole bit for those of you that were there with that. Ruth's not here now, and certainly this finance chair is not. So I think it's important that we have that, and it may be maybe we need to discuss that further as to what the role of the central is in presenting to budget to the district, okay?
Right.
Not to the town, because, the blending or the blurring of these town lines as far as education, to me, gets reflected a little bit by how each town has presented this quote budget, and I don't know.
I think it's fair to say that really only Middlebury got a presentation at its town meeting, or even had any sort of school portion to its town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
What?
We had a section.
You did?
Set aside. I tried not to be involved, I got something, but
That happened to a number of people, that if you were a board member and you were at your town meeting, you were called upon and people had questions, and so I think it would be.
It's one thing to be called upon by the public, it's another to be called upon by the moderator for that town who says now the schools can answer these questions, okay? I mean, that's a very different type of...
the select board actually put a time for the school board.
Right, and that to me...
Right, that's...
Not for this school board to report, but for a report on the school. And so we had Tracy, that stuff, saying some things.
Yeah, I find
it was very confusing.
Well, I think making it clear, like you said, and making it come to have something from the school board would be great, whether it's a little summary and then it's a budget report, just to put in each book, or to share a town meeting, I think it would be great. Explain that individual board members will not represent the entire board at the board.
Yeah.
And it contains all the good information that was created last year and will be created this year.
Yeah.
And part of the complaints I remember is the timing of the meeting that we had.
Of the annual meeting? It tends to fall during February break. It's by charter required to be then.
Our charter?
Yeah, is that our charter or is it statute?
We set it there. but we only had a small window to put it in,
Well,
so.
I mean, it's a tiny one. And
Yeah.
So that this letter, page, whatever it is, should explain, we have no choice. The only window we have are these 3 days or whatever it is. It sounds like we're getting in the way. You know, we're not, why don't we have it when it's more convenient? Or something? Well, it's the only time we can do it.
Right, so
Is that truly the only day that you can have it is during February break?
well, this is our annual
It's not
meeting.
necessarily during February break. February break moves around.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
it's
whatever
not,
that day.
yeah.
Well, the difference is that we have an annual meeting on that statutorily required, or charter required date, at which we elect people and warn things. The budget presentation that we do is entirely optional, and we could probably do at a different, more convenient time, as well as during the annual meeting.
Yeah, I don't think the annual meeting, I mean, I don't remember it being necessarily a bad time. It's just well before town meeting, and a lot of people got presentations the day of at the town meeting. So I think it was just, people weren't aware that the old UD3 date, which is pretty much our date now, right?
Yes.
That, you know, for UD3, that's when it all happened. So people that were used to that in certain communities felt fine with it. But every town had an elementary, so in Middlebury, you didn't get UD3, you just got Mary Hogan at town meeting. So to me, it's just it's a shift in culture, and I think your point's a really good one, that to have a unified message to communicate to all the select boards, I think would be really helpful.
Well, that may require a letter from the chair explaining the process a little better, and that a designated time at the town meeting is, we've evolved away from that we now sort of operate as our own municipality.
And your options, if you want information, you
That's
do
right.
this meeting, that meeting,
Yeah.
that meeting, everything's on the web. For those who do the web.
Yeah.
And as a warning to Dr. Burrows, the town, at least I know my town said, well, town meeting will die if we don't have something about school that will engage people. So then when I declined, they started asking the school and teachers and principals to do some sort of presentation, which is above and beyond what you said that happened in Lipton as well. So we might also need
But the
to
presentation in Salisbury was really not budget related, it was really just kind of a...
That's what I'm saying, they had the school do it instead, because I said no. But that's just another added pressure on the schools that may or may not be welcome. So just to think about how you might want to encourage or discourage something like that if you are going to write to the select boards as they plan their town meetings.
That's not true of Middlebury. Because the schools did not have.
That's right.
Not have discussions until Ruth did them.
Yes, that's right. And before that, Mary Hogan had its own date, and UD3 had its own date, and so you just had a Middlebury town meeting.
Right, so the high school never came up at
Yeah.
the town meeting.
Interesting.
But I think the smaller communities, because the school is such an important part of that small community, they want to talk about it. So I can see where the pressure is on the smaller schools.
Exactly.
Right.
But the irony is, they were totally separate.
I know.
Right? The select board had a meeting, and the school board had a meeting, totally separate.
That's right.
We just took turns.
Yeah.
Who went first?
Right. Right, so how can you have a school time when there is no school board?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the cultural shift.
Yeah.
How to recognize that and value that, but also respect each other's boundaries of what our roles are.
I can say, I think Salisbury's done as good a job as you can do to sort of fill that gap, because you don't even have a town meeting anymore.
Well, they just did it on Saturday instead of on Monday night.
Right, but everything is voted by Australian ballot, so you're not really voting on anything. So the challenge to the Salisbury town meeting is twofold.
Yes, maybe we're unique. Maybe the other towns aren't facing that. But, and I'm happy to say no again. Be the bad
I've gone every year.
And then
so.
step in.
All right. I want a motion to adjourn. No, Steve, I'm sorry.
One quick thing.
Yes?
I've heard from a couple of different sources that there is a move afoot, or being discussed around the high school, since it's no longer a union high school, about renaming the high school?
About what?
Wow.
About renaming the high school because it is no longer a union high school?
Well, not only just renaming the high school, changing its colors and changing the mascot.
Yeah, but that's not true, I was told, just the.
Well, I don't know, that was what one of the members of the committee told me, so.
I know nothing.
Mr. Lawson.
I know nothing.
Steve's just fueling the fire here, that's what his job is.
Actually, there is a committee, and it meets quite regularly with Bill Lawson. And it is about changing the name of the high school, and they did look at changing the mascot and changing the colors. So.
I was told that it's not
Did they
true.
look at also including the middle school in that conversation, because that's part and parcel of the
Yeah,
larger?
same.
No,
Yeah, okay.
no, they were just talking about the high school.
And do they remember what happened in South Burlington when they tried to change it?
Oh, God, let's not get on that.
All right, what's that?
We've got enough on our plate, doesn't it?
I'm sorry.
Motion.
Thank you. All right, motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you.